So how can you as a parent meet the complex needs of your children in today's incredibly complex world? Well, I've got the best guest for you right here on the lifestyle.org podcast. All right, I'm here today with Kiva Schuler. She is a parenting coach. She's written this incredible book that just came out this last fall called The Peaceful Parenting Revolution. Welcome, Kiva Schuler.
Thank you, Roy, for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Oh, it's great. We're going to talk about something that all parents feel like they're the worst at, parenting. I don't think I've met a perfect parent yet that has children. You know, there's all these people that give advice, but they don't have kids yet. So we kind of ignore them.
Yeah, I think that we should just get rid of the idea of perfection being on the table right off the bat, because it's actually really useful to be less than perfect as a parent and show our kids that we get to make mistakes. They get to make mistakes. It's kind of how we clean them up that matters. So I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've written this book, The Peaceful Parent Revolution, with the R in parentheses. It is really an evolution. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote this book.
I'm the founder of a company called the Giant Institute for Parenting, and we've been training parenting coaches in our peaceful methodology since 2011. People have been asking me to write this book for years, and I kind of did what you just said. Like, I'm not a parenting expert. You know, I have a company that does this. It felt very uncomfortable for me to claim that I have any expertise around how other people should raise their children. But in redoing our curriculum a couple of years ago, we dove into the research of child development, brain development, emotional intelligence, how children can maintain their self-confidence and self-esteem. And I realized that this needed to go into a book because now that more than ever, children are suffering. Mental health statistics are sobering. The teen suicide rate is terrifying. And I believe that parents really are the foundational solution that can create a lot of change in a child's life very quickly. So for me, this really feels like meeting the moment with compassion and education, and hopefully helping things be a little bit better for my readers.
I love that. Just off the bat here, I want you to help us understand. Your book starts out with the word peaceful. What do you mean? What's the foundation of peaceful parenting? Because I know a lot of parents want to have peace in their parenting.
Yeah. I mean, this is really an evolution and a revolution where we examine the tactics, strategies, kind of mindsets of traditional parenting that inadvertently, I think most of the time, cause emotional wounding, separation, disconnection, misunderstandings between parents and children. Traditional parenting really comes from this foundational idea that fear and control power over, right? Using things like shaming and blaming and yelling and punishing to get children to behave is good parenting. And so peaceful parenting is kind of the antithesis of that. As peaceful parents, we're turning the mirror around. And rather than asking the question, what can I do to get my child to change their behavior? We're doing the brave work of saying, what do I need to learn to be peaceful? How can I be more calm? How can I be a better communicator? How can I make peace with my parenting past so that I'm not unconsciously putting all of that on my child, right? Generational pattern kind of stuff. And in that personal growth that we experience as parents, our children come along for the ride, because kids actually do what we do, not what we say. Yeah. And so peaceful parenting is really a parent's work versus, kind of the old way, which is that children needed to behave in a way to make us feel better.
I love that. Anything that we can do in this episode to help parents have peace, I know is going to be revolutionary for a lot of people. I've worked with several people who, it is anything but peaceful when it comes to the parenting, the discipline and all that. Worked with several people who have said, I can't stop yelling. If I stop yelling, they don't listen. So I have to yell. And that's why I yell, is because the only time they'll actually take me serious and listen is when I lose it and I'm yelling at them. And so any other solution that we can help these parents have, I think will really help them just even feel a little less guilt as they continue on in the parenting process.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, that's such a common mindset and belief structure that, kind of call it the big lie. The big lie being that we have to give our kids tough love or be hard on them or yell at them to teach them to be good human beings, to have values, morals, right? That inner compass of decision making that leads them to be good and successful people. And we don't. Kids love to learn. They are wired to be in connection with their primary caregivers and parents. They want to collaborate. They want to cooperate. But what you've just named, this kind of yelling cycle, it's just learned behavior in a family culture.
Yeah.
And that means new things can be learned, right? There are new ways of communicating that don't cause harm, that are effective. Yeah, it's going to take some patience. And it's not going to work right away. Like if I threaten my kid, yeah, they're going to jump up from the table and go clean their room. But there's a price. And that price for me is too much. And I think that that's what's happening for kids, is that they are exposed to a plethora of information that is rightfully telling them that this isn't how people should treat each other.
Yeah.
And so when they're experiencing that from their parents, it's really challenging. There's rebellion, there's rejection, there's conflict, and it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah. I tell people, you don't lose your temper. It's impossible to lose your temper. You choose your temper because you've chosen ahead of time what will my level of response go to in this situation. And so subconsciously and consciously, you've already chosen your temper. You never lose it. You just choose, this is what my temper will respond at this level. And as I've worked with people, I've actually had to help them write a game plan for when you are angry because of a situation at this level. So what is your response? And by choosing it now, you won't lose it later. And so for me, it's very important. I have 2 teenage boys. I should be yelling all the time, but I don't yell at my kids. Even the other night, my 17-year-old, just turned 17-year-old, he did something. He stepped out of line and it was inappropriate. And we had a sit down conversation, but my voice never got above this level. And we were able to actually go to depth because I wasn't beating him down with a different choice in my level of temper.
The true essence of discipline is to teach, right? When we talk about providing discipline to our children, they are our disciple. And we can all, kind of recognize that when people are screaming at us, berating us, diminishing us, belittling us, that's the best environment for learning, right? Our nervous system is escalated. Their nervous system is escalated. What you just named is the fight, flight, or freeze response, right? In nervous system science. And once you're in that red zone, all of the energy in your brain goes to your survival core. You no longer have access to higher reasoning, to cooperation. It's impossible practically to hear another person when you're in that state. And it's what has kids not really want to be around us, quite frankly. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I agree. There's this balance that, I see parents struggling with, which is especially today with the newest generation of parents. Parents want their kids to like them. That they want to not do what their parents did. And, there's kind of a joke where you either want to do things just like your parents or nothing like your parents in the way that you raise your kids. And I see a lot of parents, it seems like they're overcompensating, trying to be their kid's best friend, but you're
Yes.
not called to be their best friend. You will be extremely close. You're better than a best friend. Your family, you are closer than a best friend, but you are called to parent your child, not to get yourself in an awkward situation where I see a lot of parents nowadays, they can't talk to their teenage children about inappropriate behavior because, well, I don't, I'm not in a situation to where I want us to lose this relationship that we have.
Yeah.
And so how do you help parents who are really trying to navigate this tightrope walk between being friends with your kids, but also being the disciplinarian, the person who is training your child to become the best that they can be as they launch into their life calling?
Yeah. So there are two kind of parenting strategies that do this. So power over, right, we're all familiar with. Do as I say, not as I do. And there's also power under, right, where all of the power in the relationship is being given to children. I believe, yes, because of what you just said, and also because we're afraid of our children's big emotions. We don't know how to handle our own anger. So, how the heck are we going to handle theirs? We haven't processed our own grief and sadness. And so, we'll do everything to protect them from theirs. Power under parenting can be just as harmful, I think, as power over parenting. They both come with a price tag. And so the work at the Giant Institute for Parenting is really creating a power with relationship ethos in the family culture.
Yep.
My feelings and needs matter. Your feelings and needs matter. And respectfully, through conversation, we are going to come to agreements together.
Yeah.
And so that's really, I think this again, it's why we get to turn the mirror around. Because in order to raise an actual human adult, we have to be an actual human adult, which means that we have to know, what are we afraid of, right? Like, am I going to buy my, 8-year-old the toy in the Target because I don't want him to melt down and I'll feel embarrassed and it will be stressful? Well, okay, he's going to melt down, right? That's okay. The feelings aren't the problem. It's our avoidance of them and trying to manage them and stuff them in a little, cookie jar that causes harm.
I love that. That was a real world experience I went through in Target. My
right, we've all had that experience.
yeah. My youngest, we had the toy in the shopping cart, and he was acting up and throwing a tantrum. And my wife and I had decided before, and I think it's important for the parents to decide before, how you're going to actually manage and what your game plan is for how you raise the most responsible children. So we had planned before that we would not allow our children to throw a tantrum, and we would give in to whatever this terrorist was demanding. And so we had decided if they throw the tantrum, well, there has to be a consequence so that we don't have to continually deal with this every time we're going out in public. And so he starts crying. The thing that surprised me the most, because I felt like I was, pretty strong in my belief. This is for the kid. This is for the best of the kid. It was the hardest thing for me as a parent to take that toy, put it back on the shelf and say, because you're acting this way, you don't get rewarded. You do not get the toy. To go all the way through the checkout line, to go all the way to the car, the kid crying, still sobbing when we get it home.
Yeah.
It was incredibly hard for me as a parent to do that, because there's the embarrassment of everyone's looking at you like, can't you keep your kid quiet? Your kid's throwing a tantrum. Can't you raise a kid right? But I'll tell you this, as hard as that was going through that one experience, it was the only experience we ever had, because the next time we were in Target, I said, I'm going to put the toy back. Oh, they stopped immediately because they understood the reward consequence, little negotiation we had there, and they knew I would follow through. And I think that's one of the challenges in parenting, is that the parents are negotiating with the child. And especially if they're younger than 7 years old, their brain has not fully developed the area of reasoning that they have after the age of 7. And I see parents negotiating and trying to reason.
You want to hear something crazy? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, please.
This outer cortex of the brain, where executive function happens, isn't done developing until you're in your mid-20s.
Wow.
Right? And
and
we
yeah,
forget, we think that this 7-year-old has a grown-up brain in their little body. They don't. They have even a 16-year-old. Teenage brains are literally rewiring every neuron. That's why you see a dip in their ability to follow through on tasks, to remember things. It's not that they're irresponsible or whatever names we call them. It's that, like, literally their brains are rewiring every synapse.
wow.
Right?
That's yeah, well, that's really helpful, because just even looking at our own lives, I think we look back. I have many friends that won't even go back to their high school alumni weekend because they're embarrassed of their decision-making process that they had at that time.
Mm.
But what you're saying is, you know, look look at the fact that it's later on in life that you actually are able to look back and realize, yeah, you were not fully in control of what you should have been in control of at that time.
Yeah, that allows for so much compassion for yourself, right? To know that you are a child trying to make sense of a world that you haven't had experience, you haven't had
Yeah.
feedback, you haven't had much failure. I think that's another thing that I really see in our culture is kind of like padding children with bubble wrap
Yeah.
to keep them from experiencing failure. Well, to be an adult, you've got to know how to navigate losses, disappointments, setbacks,
Yeah.
death, right? All these real world things happen. And
Yeah.
the more that we create opportunities for children to actually experience that while they're with us, the
Yes.
better equipped they will be to navigate it when they're out on their own.
I tell people, let your kids fail small and
Yeah.
medium so that they never fail big.
Yeah.
Um, if we don't let our kids, number one, fail, number two, learn from the failure. I say there's no losing if you're learning. And if a child learns how to lose and understand that I can grow from it, I can adapt to it, that's when they grow. The challenge is parents unwittingly become the defense attorney of their child. So when I was a kid, when you were a kid, you get in trouble at school, boy, you got in trouble at home as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was worse. I worked on the university level about 15 years ago for 6 years. And I would have parents calling in as a defense attorney trying to get their kids off, even though their kids had either were failing my class or had done something to get them in disciplinary action at the school. And that the parents were trying to make sure that there were not only no consequences at school, but no consequences at home, because they didn't want to in some way stunt that child's future. And I kept telling them the worst thing that we could do to stunt their future is to let them not fail now, because this is a
Right.
small failure compared to what they'll fail in the future if they learn this repetitive pattern that it's okay for me to be irresponsible or to do these behaviors because I've always gotten off before. Why wouldn't I get off in the future?
Yeah. And then they get out, they launch, they get their first job, and they get laid off. Something happens and they I'm seeing these young adults in my
Yeah.
world crumble in the face
Yeah.
of adversity. And, I mean, I'm a Gen X human. We were basically raised by, like, here's a bowl of food on the
Raised by wolves.
floor. See you in 2 weeks. So of course we're the hyper parenting generation, to your
Yep.
point. But the pendulum will swing because this is not what's in the best interest of raising responsible, mature leaders, right? That are going to go into the world and change things that need to be changed, speak up in the face of injustice. We've got to build these muscles in our children to navigate all of that. And again, like, not to, I feel like a little bit with a dead horse with this, that means we got to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So how do I take responsibility? How do I forgive myself for past mistakes? How can I be more assertive in my life? How can I be a more effective communicator?
Yeah, I love that. And it kind of goes along with what you talk about in your book as well, when you talk about discovering what you really want for your kids.
Yeah.
I think that's extremely important for the parents to have a vision of what is success? I work with a lot of people in trying to help them live their most successful life. And the first thing that we always start with in the very first session is, what is success to you? What do you really want? And what's in between you and the success that you want that we need to navigate as lovingly as possible between? So talk to me about your process of helping parents discover what they really want for their kids.
Yeah. I mean, in the book, The Peaceful Parenting Revolution, we dedicate 3 chapters to vision and values. Because what happens is if we don't intentionally think about what matters in our family culture for us to pass on to our children intentionally, what gets filled in is minutia, micromanaging, right? We're managing to the chaos of the moment instead of remembering what our actual job is, which is to raise the future adult that this child will be. And so that vision and values piece is essential, because when I know, for example, in my family, education is an incredibly important value. And I've been anchored in that from when the kids were little. We're going to raise readers and thinkers. That's like in our family. My kids will roll their eyes if they hear me say that one more time, but we are raising readers and thinkers. That's our family culture. And so that was an anchor for us to have to follow. And then like some of the little stuff can go like, yeah, they're having a meltdown before they get in the car and bickering with, my kids are 18 months apart, bickering like, cool. Did we read a book today? It keeps your eye on the prize. Yeah. And helps you to assert your more, right? Like there are times that we need to be more authoritative in our parenting to save that for when it really matters, because it's tied to our vision and values.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. That it sounds to me like a more proactive approach instead of a reactive approach. Yes. And I think the easiest, most human way to parent kids is to be reactive in everything that comes up. Well, okay, now we have to deal with this because this came up, and now we have to deal with that because that came up. And you're working like a fireman, trying to put out fires, but you're not working like an architect building the buildings. And so you always feel like we're always behind trying to fix things instead of trying to build things. And so the proactive approach that you delineate here and in your book, I think is probably one of the most priceless things that parents could do, to have a plan, to have a vision, to say, what are our family mantras? I think a lot of families don't have a family mantra. Our family just last February took a weekend, did a family purpose retreat. And by the end of it, we wrote our family purpose statement. What is our family purpose statement? And it's something that, guides everything that we do and also helps us know what not to do. There's a bunch of good things we could do, but it'd be a waste of time for us as a family.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. I want to go on a family purpose retreat. I mean, we have a lot of mantras in our family, and, now I have teenagers, so a lot of them have become jokes, but, they create culture, ritual, right? You have this feeling of like, I am in a family unit that is guided by a sense of humor and a sense of intellect. And, the things that are in my home aren't maybe going to be the same as other people's, but what that gives kids is an incredible amount of belonging, right? I am a part of something that is unique and special and definable. And that's magic. And I think something that so many kids just aren't getting in these crazy busy times that we live in, right? Hustle culture, overachievement, 87,000 activities. And we can intentionally stand against that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so important, just from the standpoint of, the most guilt-ridden profession in the world is being a parent. I think that's why people enjoy being grandparents so much, is like, you get a second chance to,
here's your baby back.
And I think that's, I think it's just the chance to be peaceful and to come into these kids' relationships, not being stressed out, not being overworked, exhausted with all the daily grind, but to truly just invest in these precious, kids. But yeah, there's nothing that makes you feel more guilty. As much as I'm trying to, do my best as much as you're trying to do your best. I'm sure there's more times than not that we look and we say, man, I could have done that differently. And then we write down, okay, what would we do differently? And it becomes great advice for us and for everyone else that
This is
that happens to
another
connect with it.
radical shift from traditional parenting to peaceful parenting, what you just named. Because as a peaceful, mature parent, I also get to embrace vulnerability.
Yeah.
And, I don't know about you, Roy, but I never heard I'm sorry from my parents, right? It was always,
Yeah.
you made me yell. If you hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have acted that way, right? Like the mother of all gaslighting was kind of the way that parenting was done. It's not that my parents were bad people or unique. It was just how it was. And I think that for me personally, those opportunities to create what we call repair, right? That we have a repair process, right? When we don't act within our values or ideals as parents, how do we make it right?
Yeah.
And part of that is vulnerability, right? Being able to go to your child and say, that was not my best moment. I'm feeling sad. What was that like for you? And being willing to receive their actual experience without getting defensive, without projecting, without putting the blame on them.
Yeah.
Doing the work within ourselves to alleviate guilt and shame, because otherwise there's kind of this micro hook that happens where we're kind of asking our kids to make us feel better by forgiving us. And then creating a new path forward. The next time that happens, what might we try instead?
Yeah. I love that. And you're right. Many people listening or watching this, they've experienced the same thing where they have at least one parent. I have one parent who has never in my entire lifetime, almost 53 years, never said, I'm sorry. And, it does create a situation to where myself, you're right. There is this pendulum swinging and we're always looking to fight that pendulum because we can go to extremes. But for me, it's very important for my kids to hear me say, I'm sorry. So there have been times when, I just haven't responded in the way I should have, or I assumed I knew what they were talking about. And I just acted rash and, did my dad thing and ultimately had to sit them down later. To me, it's more important as a dad to show and to model to my kids that when I'm wrong, I don't blame them for their bad communication. I sit down and I say, I should have asked better questions. I should have listened, or I shouldn't have jumped to conclusion. I was wrong in the way that I reacted there. The look on my boys' faces is priceless, but the look on someone else's face that actually does me more good is when I look at my wife and I see her there, realizing that, I am trying to also teach my boys the vulnerability of it's okay to be wrong. I think we've raised so many narcissists in today's society who are unable to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And to be able to say the most loving act I can do for you is to not only admit I was wrong, but to try to in some way show you that being a parent isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about, trying to do my best, be proactive, but I'm going to mess up and I'm going to apologize because when you mess up as a child, I'm expecting you to sit down and have a calm conversation with me too about, I'm sorry. And I'm not going to give you excuses. I'm just going to tell you that I was wrong.
When I say that peaceful parenting will change the world, this is exactly what I mean. We're literally rewriting relationship structure. We're informing the relationships that our children will have in the future in the way that we treat them. We're giving them the gift of preserving their esteem and confidence and voice and rights as they become adults, so that we don't have another generation of people pleasers and bullies, right? Which way am I going to get my needs met and power? But how can I be a cooperative, compassionate, empathetic person who's going to do the right thing even when nobody's watching?
Yeah.
That's what I want to empower, not just my kids, all kids to have the gift of. That story made me teary, Roy. Thank you for.
Yeah. Well, it made me teary too, but I promise not to cry on this podcast.
Okay, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like what you're looking at is a new way of discipline, and I'm really encouraged to hear your approach and to read about your approach. How would you define this new way of discipline? Because one of the things I'm seeing most prominent right now is the new way of discipline is no discipline, and I think
Yeah.
that's the cruelest thing we can do with our kids. You even
Yeah.
use the word disciple, which discipline is from that same root word of
Yeah.
teaching and training and creating mentor models. And so
Yes.
help us understand your new model for
Yeah.
discipline.
So let me just say, for the record, unequivocally, peaceful parenting is not permissive parenting. Full
Hmm.
stop.
Yeah,
I think that there's just so much misconception, and oh my goodness, we just get daggers thrown at us on our social media
I can imagine.
platforms. This is why kids are so entitled, or this is why they're school shooters. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it hurts my heart. And I am, aware that there's just so much misunderstanding here. So peaceful parenting does not abdicate our responsibility as parents to have boundaries, expectations, to have rules. We are not using tools of manipulation, fear, control, punishments in order to force complied behavior, right? So we're not expecting compliance. But listen, so much of the conversation that we've had today has been full of consequences,
Yeah.
right? There are natural consequences and there are logical consequences. And these are the tools of peaceful parents, right? When my child forgets their ballet shoes and shows up at ballet, it's really sad that you're going to have to sit and watch. That is a natural consequence of forgetful behavior. If there's a child who, leaves the house on their bike without their helmet, the logical consequence is you lose access to the bike until you show me in various ways that you are committed to wearing the helmet.
Mm-hmm.
What we depart from at the Giant Institute for Parenting are arbitrary consequences.
Yes.
So you didn't put your helmet on, you need to go to your room and you are not welcome in my presence anymore. That is an arbitrary consequence. Timeouts are an arbitrary consequence. They do not teach children how to do what we want them to do. They just remove them from the thing that they long for the most, which is our safety and connection.
Yeah.
And so this is why it really is about becoming, I love what you said, a mentor model, right? We are their teacher. We are their guide. We train parenting coaches, right, to do this work with families. But in many ways, we are using the skills of coaching to parent. And kids thrive. They absolutely become everything that they're capable of when we stop cutting them off at the knees all the time, even though that's what most of the world says good parenting should look like.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big advocate of the punishment needs to fit the crime. And that's what you just kind of defined there as you looked at this new way of discipline. It's really hard for parents. And that's the one thing that we all have to acknowledge is that in the heat of the moment, when you're really upset, like I mentioned a couple of nights ago, our 17-year-old had crossed some lines and so my wife and I immediately are what we should take this away, we should take that away and lose this privilege, lose that privilege. And I stopped and I said, look, the punishment needs to fit the crime. And so let me think about it for a moment, and then we'll come up with a plan of action. I went out by our pool and sat down. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon, early evening. And I sat there for 15 minutes, just decompressing, not reloading, not figuring out all the little bullets I was going to shoot at my son, but getting myself to a place of calm and then thinking, what is the best punishment that'll fit this crime? And that's when we brought my son downstairs and we had a conversation with him. I also asked my son this, and I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but for him, it seems to work. I always ask him, okay, when you have a son and he's done the same thing, what do you think would be the thing that would motivate him to no longer do that? What punishment would you give your son? And it's interesting, the response is he's much more severe than I am in what he suggests.
You're like, wow, that's kind of harsh.
And I'm like, are you serious? You realize you're telling me what to do. But he's a dear heart. My kids are just the sweetest kids. But they're normal. They're going to make mistakes, just like I still make mistakes.
Totally.
And so for me, I think it's so important to say, if we are going to help them to change behaviors, it can't just always be about a general punishment. Although I know there are some headstrong children that at times, well, you've had them, have to do this punishment that fits the crime, and it doesn't seem to be enough.
So much compassion for headstrong children. Like, let's fall in love with the headstrong children.
Yeah.
Because what is actually happening is that they, through their behavior, are communicating that they have a need, that they have an integrity bar that's been crossed. And as parents, there are ways that we can learn to hear them through their behavior and start to provide for those needs in appropriate ways that actually, like, these are the kids, right, that are going to go change the world. Like, let's be headstrong, please. And find a way to do that cooperatively. It's like, we got to look at the big picture here. And if we're telling strong-willed, articulate, argumentative children to not be that, is there some like magical switch in the future when they're going to, take on the environment or politics or whatever their calling is? Like, it's about getting underneath that passion and intellect and guiding it in a positive direction. I would get off my soapbox now. I love strong-willed kids the most. So
me too. And as a former professor, my favorite students, the ones who are still really close friends of mine to this day, were always students who were strong-willed. Strong and willed are both positive terms. They're positive words. We want young people with strong wills. We just have to learn how to focus that strength and that will into what is the productive purpose that their life will bring into the world to make the world a better place, to find a group of people that they can passionately serve in order to change the world in a positive way. I've just noticed that a lot of the strong-willed kids that have acting out behaviors are kids that really have troubled homes. They do not have balance, structure, or any sense of peace in their home. And so the strong will translates into acting out behavior.
Correct.
And so what I've found is, as they begin to form these relationships that they can relax, they feel comfortable, they feel trusted, they feel loved, that's when we can change the strong will away from being rebellious to the outside world, to understanding you can take that same rebellion and rebel against something that's negative in the world, rebel against something that's being ignored in the world, and be the rebellion that steps up and says, we will change this for the better, for the good. And I've seen a lot of these young people who other teachers said, I hate having this kid in my class. I cannot wait till this kid graduates. And for some reason, they were my best students. For some reason, they were not struggling with their grades in my class. They were not struggling with behavioral issues in my class once they knew that I was a leader, an adult who actually cared for them and actually had really big, dreams for them as well. They were not the only one who was responsible for dreaming of their future. And so I think a lot of the parents who have strong-willed children, if you have your kid going to the principal's office more than the principal, perhaps the issue is your child is in some way at unrest at your home. They don't feel at peace. They feel this sense of almost like you're in a chair leaning back and you don't know whether the chair is going to fall or whether you're going to catch yourself. And in this state of unrest, I think the strong-willed kid tends to have this acting out behavior.
I mean, this can be hard for parents to hear. And so I just want to acknowledge children. Remember, we talked about children's brains. Children do not have the ability. I mean, heck, most adults don't have the ability to clearly communicate their inner narrative, right? Their needs, to make requests. And so children communicate through behavior. All behavior, whether good or bad, is an expression of a need, and whether that need has been met or unmet. And so it can be painful to consider that perhaps our children's behavior is because they have a need that we haven't met for them, but it is the bravest, most courageous step of inquiry that can allow a different future to emerge. You talked about rebellion, and it just reminded me to share, the Giant Institute for Parenting has trained over 1,000 peaceful parenting coaches globally. We have coaches in Kenya, in China, in the Middle East. It's mind-blowing what this has become. And it exists because when I was 16 years old, my younger brother, Ian, who's 7 years younger than me, was being punished. His head was over the sink. His mom, my stepmother, scrubbing his mouth with soap.
Yep.
Boy, he was like being silly on the couch. And I just thought, this is crazy. She was laughing at it yesterday. And now this child is getting Tabasco and soap in his mouth. And this is so wrong. Yeah. And I promised myself in that moment that when I became a parent, I would do whatever it took to ensure that I knew how to do it fairly. That was my word when I was 16. And here we are, and so I think that rather than diminishing that voice that we all have to make the world a better place, how can we be the parent for our child that lifts them up?
I love that. It's so personal to you. It's personal to me as well, as you can tell. But at age 16, was that kind of a turning point for you when you decided this is what you were going to do with your life?
I mean, life is funny. I didn't have that realization. It was one of those like voices from God, like I just had this resounding knowing that I became a psychology major. Family systems was my favorite class in university. But, I'd been raised by a New York Jewish mother, so I went into finance. Life doesn't always reveal itself right away. But it's no surprise to me now at 50 years old that this is the life path that has unfolded. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of my brother. We've had so many conversations about his comfort, with me sharing that story so publicly. And, in the book, there's more. But, I think that we both know that saying this kind of punitive parenting caused us harm, and it didn't teach us to be good people. It taught us to be people who manipulated and lied to get our needs met.
Yeah.
And so becoming parents who are safe for our children to tell the truth to, who, in your story, you just modeled something called nervous system regulation, right? Being able to calm ourselves down first, because nothing good happens when we're in an escalated state in our nervous system. We get reactive. We're basically operating on autopilot, on conditioned behavior and reactive patterns. I mean, these are all skills. This is, people say kids don't come with a manual, and I'm like, there's a manual.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have it has way less to do with the kids than it has to do with us learning some new things and some new ways of relating, learning to be safe with big emotions, ours and theirs. You know what? Children are going to cry, and it's okay. Yeah. They're going to get mad and angry, and it's okay. And that anger is a teacher.
Yes. We act as if the kid's tears or hurt, pain, disappointment are life-threatening, but we don't act as if the lack of helping them grow from the situation is actually the life-threatening issue. And so we respond the opposite of how we should. But I also want to acknowledge, your story, that the thing that made you so passionate to go into this field and to do what you're doing. So many people have a shared experience. I imagine there's several people that teared up a little bit there just a moment ago, because they also were seeing in their own mind's eye different things that they had to go through as a child that they said, I will never do that to my kids because this is how it made me feel. Um, and and there are other people who go through a cycle of parenting to where, this is how my parents did it. This is all I know. This is all I've seen. And they repeat that pattern. And we try to help people with our life coaching system, help them understand that life doesn't happen to you. It happens for you. And if you take a look, just like what you did and said at age 16, I'm witnessing something that to me is appalling. How can I help not only my own experience, but other people's experience break that cycle, break that pattern? Because I myself and many of my contemporaries also went through the experience of having the soap in the mouth and going through it was okay one time, but you would have to gauge the parents, make sure that it was a good day to joke around and not a day that it would cause you punishment. And so I hope everyone will take a look at not only the parenting that they had to be raised by, but also a lot of the bad that came into their life that's affecting their parenting, and understand these bad things didn't happen to you. Although it feels like it happened to you, it happened for you, because the reality is you were at the right time, the right place, the right family, the right experience, even with the right siblings, whether you believe it or not, to prime you to be sensitive and empathetic to a group of people that many of the people in the world are not in any way empathetic to. And so you're actually able to serve from experience to help people understand, look, I went through this and it drove me because of my life experience, it drove me to find a better way. And so those who are going through a really tough challenge of remembering your childhood, or some of the parents or step parents that you had to endure, just understand it didn't happen to you, it happened for you. What are you going to do with that pain to help other people find another way? And that's why I'm so proud of what you've done, Kiva, to not only use this pain to help your own parenting, but thousands of parent coaches around the world.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little proud of it too. It's humbling. But I'm really grateful to do this work. I'm really grateful to be a voice in the world that says, well, wait a second. A lot of people say, well, I was parented, I was spanked, I was, whopped, whatever the word was, and I'm fine. I mean, I don't know if fine is the goal. It's not the goal I'm going for. And I think we have to look at these pervasive generational beliefs, like I'm spanking you for your own good. I'm doing right. Like our parents told us these things. And I think in a lot of cases, the people who are perpetuating that just believed their parents. And that's so understandable. I don't believe that there's the smallest of percentage of parents in the world aren't trying to be the best mom or dad that they could be. My parents were trying. Absolutely. They were doing the best with what they knew and had. They didn't have the benefit of all of the information that we have now about emotional intelligence, nervous system science, how brains develop. It's relatively new science. And so let's be the generation of parents who actually does learn parenting, right? Like in every other area of life, we get education, except for the one that's most important. Like it's a little crazy. So let's break the cycles, just go learn some things, go learn to if there's one thing, go learn to regulate your nervous system, change your life.
I love that. I had kids later in life, and I didn't get married till I was 30, and I had our first son when I was 36. And up until that time, all my friends had gotten married, had kids, and, all the people around you and your community at your church, whatever, they've got kids. And you see a lot of these kids who are just out of control. And I used to say, give that kid to me for a week, a couple of good spankings, that kid would knock that behavior off, because I was growing up spanking. And so I was not averse to spanking. I thought, if my kids are acting up, they're going to get a spanking. That's what's going to happen. But the funny thing, looking back now, 17 years later, I never spanked my kids. And I look at it in a happy way. But had I told myself, you will not spank your kids, I would have thought, boy, I'm going to have horrible kids.
Yeah,
They're going to turn out spoiled, and no one's going to want to be around them. I have to say, our kids in every stage of their lives were the kids that people invited us back to their house, because our kids weren't climbing up their curtains. They weren't jumping on the couch. They were very well behaved kids, and we never spanked them. And to me, the biggest surprise at this stage of parenting is that my kids turned out so good, thanks to their mom. But
thanks, Mom.
Didn't have to. Yeah,
we didn't. You did okay too, Roy.
No, I'm telling you, my wife is just. She and I, had these conversations before we were even married. And so in a lot of the life coaching I do in Hollywood and here with trying to help people have longer marriages is, are you talking about these things? Are you talking about the things that you liked about your parents, didn't like about how your parents raised you or disciplined you, whatever? And we actually had a whole plan before we were even married, and we didn't have our first kid until 6 years into marriage, or second 9 years into our marriage. Wow. And I think the thing that I'm the most, my wife, I'm extremely proud of her. But one of the things I'm very proud of her is her approach to parenting, to where because we had this game plan as a team, at times when I was weak and I would have deviated from the plan, she kept us firm. And because of that, I feel like our boys turned out really, as very enjoyable young men to be around. And yet they don't have to go through the memory experience of us beating them and giving them spankings just as hard as we could to make them know how serious we are. And if you don't want to feel this pain anymore, don't do that behavior over here. Yeah. And so I'm very thankful we were able to navigate and say, what motivating factors can we look at? What motivates them to not do that behavior? And as difficult as it is to find punishments that fit the crime, we were able to in some way find motivators to say, you're going to lose this privilege. You'll lose these privileges if you continue this behavior. Give them a chance of redemption to clean up their behavior. And if not, well, we warned you. And not to discuss it, not to argue. But
I mean, it's being okay with their unhappiness with the natural or logical consequence, right? Like it's okay that they get mad if they can't, go ride their bike anymore. It's okay. They're mad. Great. It's okay if I get mad, right? When a boundary has been crossed. One of my greatest teaching tools is expressing my anger. Yes, in a healthy way, not causing harm to myself or my children, but I will absolutely say I am so angry. Yeah. I feel disappointed. I feel like I thought we had an agreement. What happened? And this is the culture of, relationships are relationships, whether it's relationships with our kids, our spouses, friends. Conflict isn't the problem. Conflict richens, it deepens, it creates intimacy. It's our fear of conflict that has everything all messy, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And within conflict, there's typically 4 different approaches that they approach conflict. And parents either are radical on one degree, saying, how I resolve conflict is by equal or superior force, fighting back. Or others that my wife and I jokingly call free range parents do the reaction of avoidance. We just avoid the topic because I'm afraid that it will cause an issue that will become such a bad memory.
They'll be sad. They'll be angry. There was if I had a magic wand, that fear of feelings would be the thing that I would just eradicate from the planet. Feelings can't actually hurt us. They are uncomfortable. Well, when feelings can hurt us? When we stuff them inside. That's
Yes.
when they cause illness, disease, pain, reactive behavior problem, strategies that are self-sabotaging. But
Yeah.
feelings healthfully felt and expressed, that's like the rainbow of life.
Yes.
That is a tool for connection, a tool for growth, a tool for reflection, for insight. And it's such a powerful skill to give our kids. Let them
Mm.
feel.
I love that. And I think because many people are bottlers themselves and then they explode when the pressure builds up too much in the bottle. Um, we don't realize we can change that in our children. We say that, well, this kid's an open communicator, or this kid is more of a bottler, and we don't address that. We act as if that is unchangeable. But
Right.
the reality is you can take a non-communicative child and make them a great communicator. I
Yeah.
know this personally because I was a non-communicative bottler child myself, and now you
Yeah.
can't shut me up. And so you can truly change the way a person expresses their feelings by intentionally and proactively addressing the fact of, okay, I asked you how your day was. You barely gave me a syllable by saying goop. And and so unpack that. What do you mean by good? What was good about it?
Yeah.
And okay, so you said a little bit more. So, well, tell me more about that. I'm intrigued. Helping them be comfortable with communicating and understand it's important for them to communicate, not just keep it all inside, especially when it deals with feelings of sadness or anger or hurt,
Yeah.
guilt, any of those things. Helping them understand how to process it, especially that, and this is general terms, but especially for the teen girls, the girls need to verbally process. That's how they release the angst. The boys need to learn how to verbally process and not necessarily fix it. Because a natural general tendency for a male is, as they verbalize it, now here's the problem in concrete that I have to fix it today. But teach them it's okay. It's okay to just let's
Okay.
let's verbalize it. Let's put words to it so that other people around you can not only support you, but perhaps help you as you navigate this part of your life that we all had to navigate through.
Yeah. I mean, the very good news is not only can children learn this, adults can too. We
Mhm.
all have neuroplasticity. Yes, we have well-worn tracks, in our brains about how we do anger, but that doesn't mean it's fixed. And I think that, people think that this is what would it be? A trait versus a characteristic for, anyway, it's changeable. We can
Yeah.
learn new ways.
Yeah.
And, all of the science supports that the best way to teach children emotional intelligence, which, by the way, is now the leading indicator of a person's life fulfillment, happiness, success. We live in a collaborative relationship world. Okay, so what does the science say? It's modeled. Children have mirror neurons, 10x the mirror neurons that we do. So the more that we learn to be emotionally intelligent communicators, the better our children will demonstrate that skill set because they've got these mirror neurons. They're modeling
Yeah.
what we do. And so I don't know. I'm just a fan of the concept that it's grown-ups' responsibility to do the work, this kind of work first, and not ask our children again to live up to a standard of behavior and relationship skills and communication skills that we don't have. That's why they think we're hypocrites when they're teenagers.
That's so powerful. Now you have online resources, your website. We're going to put it in the description below, but tell us a little bit about what people can find on that website, or if people are interested in becoming a parenting coach themselves.
So the Giant Institute for Parenting, giantinstituteforparenting.com, is absolutely chock full of resources, not only for those of you that might be interested in joining me and making this your mission and doing this work with families, but also resources. We've talked about spanking, about yelling. There are white papers that really go into the science, because I think when we know that this isn't just a nice idea, that this is actually backed up in neurological research, psychological research, then we're more motivated to follow through and kind of, put aside the naysayers that tell us we're ruining our kids because we're not beating them. So there's a ton of resources there. The book, of course, is available on Amazon, and it's a great first step. It really is the how-to framework that can help you move towards a more peaceful experience. And I think a more positive experience, a more effective experience with your kids by revolutionizing the way that we parent.
I love that. I hope all of you will get Kiva's book. We also put the link to the Amazon access to her book, The Peaceful Parenting Revolution, right in the description below as well. So please check out her book and find some more peace and joy in your parenting as well. Kiva, it's been amazing talking with you. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
I feel the same. What a great conversation, Roy. Thanks for being you. I hope that doesn't sound cheesy, but you're kind of awesome.
You as well. You as well. Thank you. We got this mutual admiration society going on today. But thank you. I know you're going to help so many people, not only through this podcast episode, but with your work, what you're doing. So thank you for living out your life purpose and helping parents in this way.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching this episode of the lifestyle.org podcast. If you'd like more content like this, definitely hit the subscribe button, hit the like button so other people will come across this world-changing content as well. You can also go to our website, lifestyle.org, and there you'll find our television broadcast. You'll find more podcasts like this and countless articles on our blog to help you live your best life possible. I hope to see you in our next episode. Take care.